Hello, my name is Helen Sung, and welcome to part two of my digital residency. I'm calling it Reorientation Asian American Artists Out Loud. Last week, we featured the wonderful multidisciplinary artist Amanda Pong Botibakia. This episode, I'm really excited to share the story of a young poet and spoken word artist named Serena Yang. She is a freshman at Swarthmore University near Philly, and I first found out about her during the New York City COVID Remembrance Day earlier this year in March 2021, where she, as New York City's Youth Poet Laureate, read one of her poems.
A city that never sleeps is a city that never forgets. Bruise upon bruise, pressed flowers, yellow pages, brick mortar, uncles on the porch step keeping the neighborhood gossip alive.
For those of you who might be more familiar with my work, you'll know that jazz and poetry is something close to my heart. In fact, I did a whole album on these two topics. It was a collaboration with the great American poet. He is a former chairman of the National Endowment and also California State's Poet Laureate, the wonderful Dana Gioia. So I was really just thrilled to welcome a young poet like Serena. And for this episode, we're going to kick things off with my quartet performing a piece from the album that I did with Dana Gioia. It's called Sung with Words, and this piece is called Convergence, which I think is very apropos. A meeting of the minds, a meeting of artistic disciplines, a meeting of creativity and creative spirits. So here's my quartet performing Convergence. So thank you. That was my original composition, Convergence, off of my CD, Sung with Words. And thank you again to E.J. Strickland on the drums, Rick Rosato on the bass, and John Ellis on saxophone for playing so beautifully. And now on to our special guest for today, Serena Yang. I wanted to do kind of something similar like I did with Sung with Words, which is take one of her poems and use the words as lyrics for a song, for a vocalist to sing. I'm not a vocalist. So this poem, Serena calls it poem number 5. And I invited the wonderful Venetia Gould, who will perform it with my quartet. And here we go. Serena Yang's poem number 5. Telling everybody, because this is a brand new piece and I was trying to imagine what might have given birth to this poem.
Right, about poem number 5. Yes. So over the pandemic, I got into the habit of reading a lot of love poems and love poetry online, and I felt like there are some poets who I really looked up to who saw their entire body of work as love poetry. Even if they wrote about many other things, they would consider all of their poems to kind of fall under love, so overall theme. So I was really interested in this idea and wanted it to be kind of a generative practice for me and a way for me to reflect on what I'm obsessed with and what I love to write about through a series of numbered love poems. Yes. Poem number 5. Today I took all my pain and put it in a love poem. Today, I took all my pain and drew a smile onto your face. Someone said, matter can neither be created nor destroyed, but I can transfigure anything. I can pull love out of a hat and find an old friend in the eye of a rabbit. Last year, love, New Year, love, puppy love, love like a yellowing bruise, love like a sidewalk crack waiting to catch me tripping, love like a new house with all its windows thrown wide open. My love, today I wrote a poem about you. Today I became a breeze and blew through this new house with you.
I can transfigure anything. Last year love, New Year love, puppy love, love like a new house with all its windows can transfigure anything. Last year love, new year love, puppy love, love like a new house with all its windows thrown wide open by love. My love, today I wrote a poem about you. Today I became a breeze that blew through this new house with you.
Thank you to Venetia and to the band for doing such a wonderful job with poem number 5. Now, I've never done this before. I'm going to invite Serena to talk about one of her other poems. This is called Whale Song. It's such an interesting work, and we're going to try having her collaborate with the band, speaking the poem over the music, and let's see what happens. Tell us about this poem and who is Franny Choi, and the layout is so interesting. It looks like a dictionary definition. It's like...
Yes, so in terms of this unusual form for this poem, I drew inspiration from Franny Choi's poem, Glossary of Terms, which is the first poem in her book, Soft Science. And Franny Choi is one of the first spoken word poets I ever watched on YouTube when I was in 9th or 10th grade in high school, I think, and she was one of the people who really opened my eyes to the possibilities of spoken or oral poetry. Interestingly, in Franny Choi's book, Glossary of Terms is formatted in a chart, so it's actually more difficult to read out loud. It's more meant for the page, but I was curious if I could take that form and borrow it and kind of return it to its oral origins, if that makes sense. And I was interested in this poem, Glossary of Terms, in this form specifically, because I was at this point also thinking of how would I introduce a body of my work. Franny Choi chose this poem as the first poem in her book, and at this point, a lot of people were asking me, why do you write poetry? What do you write about? Why are you a poet? What do you think poetry does? What do you think a poet does? And I was like, I need to come up with an answer. I need to have an answer where I can just be like, before you ask, let me share this poem before I share all my other poems. And I was also starting a Substack newsletter around that time called Whale Song, and I wanted to write an introduction. So I was thinking, well, what is a whale song? And I borrowed this form of a dictionary and just thought about what it means for me to be writing poetry or singing, and if it's something that I need people to hear, and in that case, who has to hear it? Who am I trying to sing to? Yeah, and most of all, what kind of dream does my poetry and my writing embody? Yeah.
Thanks. Can you read it through for us so we can hear it?
Yes. Whale song, noun. Meaning, survival contingent on song. Upon learning of the whale song, humans hung up their harpoons. Bloodless monster become gentle giant. Moby Dick become Moby Dick. Meaning, whales sing for no reason at all. See also haunts and hauntings, heart sounds and other autopsies. The sounds our bodies make when we're asleep. The secrets we tell for no one to hear. Antonym, the loneliest animal in the world is the 52 Hertz whale. The loneliest animal in the world is the scientist who waits all year for whaling season only to hear a song. Antonym, the tongue, the hollow mouth. Origin, the loneliest animal in the world sings only when you're listening. Survival contingent on them knowing we exist. Dreams of being, a full sentence. Whale song, noun. Meaning, survival contingent on song. Upon learning of the whale song, humans hung up their harpoons. Bloodless monster become gentle giant. Moby Dick become Moby Dick. Meaning, whales sing for no reason at all. See also haunts and hauntings, heart sounds, and other autopsies. The sounds our bodies make when we're asleep. The secrets we tell for no one to hear. Antonym, the loneliest animal in the world is the 52 Hertz whale. The loneliest animal in the world is the scientist who waits all year for whaling season only to hear a song. Antonym, the tongue, the hollow mouth. Origin, the loneliest animal in the world sings only when you're listening. Survival contingent on them knowing we exist. Dreams of being, a full sentence. dreams of knowing we exist as a full sentence. Antonym: survival contingent on a full sentence. Thank you.
Lovely, guys. Thank you. That was awesome. So, Serena, it's so nice to have you here. And I still remember watching you read your poem as part of New York City's COVID Remembrance Day March. And I have an interest in poetry myself, being somebody who avoided it for a long time until I met a great American poet named Dana Gioia, who told me poetry is meant to be experienced out loud. And it's so interesting to hear you talk about whale song, because there was that on the other side of that too, right? That it seems like Franny's poetry might have been supposed to be on the page in some ways. But I just want to hear, how did you become a poet? How did you become interested in it? And
yeah, that's a great question actually to start with, because I also avoided poetry for a very long time. I thought I would be a bad poet. Even when I was a writer, I've written works for a long time, ever since I was in elementary school.
So you've always written?
Yes,
always
yeah.
written. Okay.
It was mostly prose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was afraid of poetry for many reasons. I think the way poetry is taught in schools is a little intimidating. Like, this poem is a riddle.
Yes, and I'm the only one who doesn't get it.
Right, yes, and then they're like, I promise, if you know what a metaphor is, and you know what a simile is, you'll be able to solve this riddle. And I think that really turned me off from poetry for a long time. Not even mentioning the kind of poetry we were reading in school, which had absolutely nothing to do with me, and I just didn't care. But for me, it was also hearing Franny Choi's poem, but through a screen on YouTube, that really opened my eyes. It felt new, it felt relevant to me. Franny Choi also comes from the spoken word tradition, as many poets do now. They don't normally stay in spoken word, so most spoken word poets also eventually like publish books, that kind of thing. But
well, tell me about, I don't think I know what you're talking, so spoken word is somebody who only deals with oral speaking, or do they have the printed word for their works too?
I would consider it kind of a subculture within not just poetry, but also like rap, monologues, and kind of like spoken performance.
Got it.
Some people will improvise. I would say most people have manuscripts like very marked over. It's their like 14th copy. But there is a tradition in slam poetry, which are poetry slams are competitions, where they should be memorized, so it appears improvised. And I think that's part of the appeal. It appears like somebody's speaking from their heart to you.
So this is what grabbed you finally for poetry.
Yeah, I get it now.
Well, I love this because the fact that you were always writing, because I remember when I took standardized tests as a kid, my verbal scores were a little higher than my math scores, and that really upset my parents. Like, what did they think of you writing to begin with?
I think they thought it was cute when I was little. My teachers, thankfully, said very kind things about me during like parent-teacher conferences, so that helped a lot, because my parents were like, great, like I love hearing compliments about my daughter, so yes, keep writing. I think I was the same. My verbal like reading scores were always higher, but my math scores also weren't that bad.
Yeah, no, they were like 97.
Yeah, like they were
right?
good.
They just weren't 99 like the verbal.
Yeah. So my parents were like very fine with it, because I think they would normally worry about the reading scores, because I think people are more confused about how to raise those. So I think they felt kind of relieved actually that in ways that they didn't really understand, I was somehow just like doing well on those without any help. But I just read a lot of books. that's what I tell, like, when people ask me, like, how do I get my kids to do better? You just have to read a lot of books. It takes a long time. It's not like math where you get them a workbook.
True.
And they'll improve by the end.
And I would get in trouble for reading under the sheets with flashlight.
Yeah. Or in class, like, behind my other notebook, my book open.
Oh, that's sneaky. I would never thought of that one. That's good. Well, so how do your parents, because once I told my parents I wanted to study music, they were not thrilled. So how did your parents react?
I wouldn't say they're thrilled, but they're definitely pretty supportive. I also say I'm the second child.
Okay.
I'm the younger sister. My older sister is currently in medical school. So she kind of took the brunt of it for me.
The
and
pressure off.
Yeah, and she really loves it. Like, she's doing what she loves too, which is great, because now we have one doctor at least. So I think my parents are not too bothered by what I'm doing. But I do feel a lot of pressure that I need to be, like, successful, if that makes sense. I need to justify that I should pursue this. That's how I felt in high school. I needed to make my writing something that could get me into college. So I needed to, like, submit to competitions, that kind of thing, which really stressed me out. And I think it almost destroyed my love for writing at that point. I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep writing. But I think I've resolve that, or I'm working through that part of it. And in college, I am thinking about majoring in English, but I'm also interested in a lot of other fields. I'm probably going to be going to academia. So my parents are, like, not thrilled about it, but it's also not the worst.
Oh, see, unlike you, I'm the oldest of 4.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so I just set the wrong example for everyone else. But okay, well, good luck to you and all your journeys, and I hope, something I'm older than you, and something that I've experienced, and I don't know if this will help you, it's just every few years, like maybe 5 to 10 years, I have to ask myself, why do I do this? Because the life of an artist is not easy, and the same answer always comes, it's because I love this. And I think the love for your craft shines through.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I do need to check in with myself and rediscover it once in a while. The few months before I became New York City Youth Poet Laureate, I was actually thinking I might never write again. I was like, that's it, my career, my very short career as a writer, as a poet, it's over. It's never happening again. But before I go, let me try out this 1-month workshop during my gap year, just to get me writing and to see if I really enjoy it. And it's only a month, it's fine. And that workshop is what led me to being the New York City Youth Poet Laureate. And I was like,
congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I was like, I guess I'm in it now.
Awesome. Well, one last thing I think we have to talk about is being Asian American.
Yeah.
And what does that mean to you? I know during the pandemic that really came to the forefront, and it's something that I've struggled a lot with in my own life, because growing up here, if somebody asked me, how do I identify, I would probably think, if I took it apart and looked at it, it's probably as a Caucasian, inside, because I don't know if they said to you, like, there's a kind of a pejorative thing, older generations would say, oh, you guys are like bananas, you're,
oh yeah.
So you know that.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah, we joke about it.
So it's, I feel this disconnect with how I look to other people and how I feel inside. And it wasn't until I started performing in Asia more regularly that I felt like the two were starting to come together. It's still a journey. So I want to just hear about, like, do people think, oh, isn't that weird? You're a poet, stuff like that.
Thank you for sharing your experience. I think I grew up in Queens. I was always kind of surrounded by other immigrant communities, many of which were Asian. My parents had their own, like, Chinese immigrant bubble. So I think I did feel quite Chinese when I was little. I think I also felt pretty American just from what we were reading in school. And I read a lot of books. I read a lot of historical fiction. I was really into, like, the American Revolutionary War, which is strange, which is very strange. And I think I felt both, but I didn't really understand how they came into contact or conflict until much later. And I think I find what you said really interesting about how there's this gap between how you look and how you notice other people are perceiving you and how you really feel. And I think that is at the core of when people say, oh, I've become, like, aware, or, oh, like, now I've become politicized, of, like, now thinking about this. I think it's when people notice that gap and start trying to bridge it or understand why it's there, what's in that gap. And I think that really started for me when I started going to high school. I would be taking the subway from Queens to the Upper East Side
wow.
every day. It was like almost a 3-hour round trip.
Yeah.
The class demographics at my school were such a wide range. Our school is not diverse. It's like 40% Asian, 50% white. Yeah, hardly any Black or Latinx teens will get into our school. It's one of those test schools in New York City. And I think I started to notice a lot of these inequalities. And I'm lucky because I think there were older students at my school who were also involved in these issues, and they would talk about it. So I had the resources to start examining what made me so uncomfortable. But I think anybody can start there. I think so much of it is just unpacking these lies or assumptions and presumptions we make about ourselves that we've kind of gaslighted ourselves into believing almost.
It's ingrained almost.
Yeah. And I think so much of what people say when they say like racial trauma or melancholia or just this kind of interminable sadness is when you can't connect how you really feel and who you really are with all of these presumptions and assumptions you've kind of absorbed about yourself or your community or your people. So I'm one of the other fields I'm interested in college is actually Asian American Studies. So I'm like scholarly interested in critical ethnic studies, but I think that has nothing to do with really understanding how race works in this country. You don't have to study that to know. You just have to be asking the right questions. You don't need to have the right answers. I actually saw a bell hooks quote yesterday that said nobody is above being co-opted or used or falling into like a trap, and that you have to understand that it's a constant struggle. And I think that's what I have to remember, and I can't forget that, just because I've been thinking about these questions for maybe 6 or 7 years, I'm not above falling into these same presumptions about myself or about other people. So I need to accept that I'm gonna have to keep asking these questions and keep discovering how it is to move around this country and this world in a body like mine, and also with a passport like mine, since I recently became an American citizen.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, this past year. Yeah, I have mixed feelings about it, but thank you.
Oh, so you were not born here?
No, I was born in Singapore.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so it's a very layered issue because when I travel to Asia also, I'm very aware of the fact I'm American, especially now that I carry an American passport. And many Asian countries, all Asian countries have a very terrible relationship or terrible historical relationship with the US.
Yeah.
And I think it would be presumptive of me, or it would be kind of ignorant of me to overlook that as well, because I am still raised in America. I'm still an American citizen now, even though I do have an Asian face. So I think looking at this from kind of a layered perspective and understanding that there's always more, like there's always a larger perspective or a different angle you can look at it at will really help.
Well, something that inspires me about your generation is that you guys are thoughtful in talking about this and asking these questions. Whereas I think I was raised in very Americanized. I think my parents made the very conscious decision to not be traditional. Like we didn't know about the hongbao and New Year's until we were at church and we're like, what are those? You got money in them? So no, I think that's, and just having the perspective that there's always more and the danger of us falling into that. I think that's a really balanced and wise way to approach it. So gosh, thank you for your story. And is there anything you want to say about your art and what you hope your art achieves, your poetry?
I'll actually jump off the hongbao thing.
Okay.
I realized quite recently, around this year, that I think my parents have a lot of cultural loss that I didn't understand. That, when our family moved over, I wasn't the only one being displaced.
Yeah.
Even if I wasn't the one making the decision, my entire family was being displaced, and it doesn't matter that my parents were like 30-something. They're still going through that migration. And I think that kind of turning away from just being so personal, like, oh my God, why am I so sad? Like, why do I feel this way? And starting to think about the other people around me really opened my eyes, because my parents I don't think they kept culture away from us on purpose, but they're the generation that grew up after the Cultural Revolution.
Yes.
Or they were like toddlers during the Cultural Revolution, so I think they also lost a lot of Chinese culture, and they and their parents also don't really know how to do some things or how to celebrate some holidays. And I was born in Singapore, so when they moved to Singapore, there are many Chinese diasporic communities there that migrated pre-Cultural Revolution, so they had so many traditions and customs that my parents told me they were like, what? How could they be Chinese and we also be Chinese? I have no idea what they're doing.
Wow.
And that really opened my eyes because I've already started thinking of my work as sort of an excavation or a kind of memory project, if that makes sense. And I think that made me realize that this memory is a lot bigger than my own personal memory, and there's a lot of responsibility in it, and I need to think carefully about what it means to be writing it in America through an English language American publishing industry. I don't really have answers to these questions yet, but I'm definitely going to keep asking them.
Thank you. Thank you so much, the wonderful poet, wordsmith, Serena Yang.
Thank you so much, Helen. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Reorientation Asian American Artists Out Loud. I hope you enjoyed meeting and hearing Serena Yang's work as much as I did, and we hope you'll join us for the final installment next week, which I'm so excited. I've never worked with a hip-hop artist before, but we will welcome the amazing Hee-Sun Lee, hip-hop MC and rapper. We'll send you off today with a selection from my jazz and poetry project, Sung with Words, a collaboration with Dana Joya. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us right after this for live Q&A with Serena and myself. The link is in the chat section. See you there.
Pity the gods no longer divine. Pity the night, the stars lose their shine.